I'm not sure I'm dressed warm enough for this. It's September 9th. It's 11 a.m. and it's 13 degrees out. I'm Prairie Plant Girl, and it looks like we're getting to the end of our season. So I garden here in Saskatchewan, Canada. We have an average of about 110 frost-free days. My gardening season starts around May 21st with frost-free time, and usually goes till about 14th of September. But tonight we have our first low down to freezing and warnings of patchy frost. So that means I need to see what I can get done here in the garden today to try and save anything that I absolutely want to save before possible frost, but also with the knowledge that we tend to have like an early frost and then it gets nicer out again, and we'll get, you know, cool nights but no frost, no freezing, and some very warm days through the rest of September and sometimes into October. When plants get this big, it's hard to just cover them up with a frost blanket or a sheet, but some things I'll be doing that with, but some I want to make sure I just get the harvest that I can off, just in case the frost gets too heavy and gets under those coverings. And some things you just don't need to be worried about at all. So I thought we'd go through the garden a little bit. I'll talk about the things that I'm going to be more concerned about, how I'm going to try and deal with them, and the things that can be left until we're getting some really hard frosts and freezes. So let's have a little look through the garden as I try and clean things up today, and I'll share with you what I do when the weather gets to be this way. Come on. So I think we'll start with what I'm not going to worry about. In this kind of weather, there's a lot of vegetables and things that can be grown regardless of a little bit of frost. The frost might take out the tops, might not, but the food that we want grows underground for the most part, so we don't need to worry about it. Great examples of that are potatoes and carrots. So I'm going to be not worrying about them as much. Now this raised carrot bed that I have here, I had to move it recently, and I moved the drip tubing around a bit, and I've noticed it's not getting watered properly. So I will come in and make sure that it's well watered, just to give these plants a good fighting chance and make them, you know, have as much water in them as they can before they freeze, to help the tops get through any cooler nights. It'll just help anything. If they're well watered, that will help things. Healthy plants that are well watered will get through a lot better than anything else. But for the most part, they're done growing anyways. This is just kind of, they're in storage mode right now. The potatoes, the same thing. They're not quite finished dying back on some of the plants, but for the most part, they've done what they're gonna do. And if the frost takes the tops, that'll be fine. With the temperature the way it is, I doubt we'll have a hard frost. So the tops probably won't even get hit, especially with where they are here, with the way the sun comes up and the temperature forecast. I think they'll be fine, but even if they're not, the potatoes in the pots and containers will be fine at this point. The same with the carrots. So some other crops I'm not really going to be worried about are under this netting, which isn't really placed that well. But I have beets under here. I planted some turnips, but I think, yeah, there was a puppy came through, stepped on them, and I had some flea beetles and bugs and birds get in here before I put the netting up, and I don't think I have any of those left. There's also a little bit of lettuce and spinach down at the end. Usually the lettuce and spinach can get through a cooler night like this, especially with just this tiny little bit of a cover, even though it's just netting. Lots of times I find they'll do just fine with that. And the beet tops as well, but it's really the beets underground that I'm looking for. Now these are just young plants, so they haven't really developed much of a beet, but I think the tops should come through this fairly unscathed, and hopefully continue to grow for another month or so for me. And that's what I would really like to try and get happening here, to get a little bit of beets. So we'll just put this netting down. I'll try and, hey Buster, I'll try and tuck it in a bit better just to help it not blow around if we get wind. And hopefully those will be fine. Again, same thing, I'll make sure, I had my sprinklers running today, and I'll make sure that these are all well saturated. Not to like being overwatered, but so that they have the moisture they need. The moisture in the soil will help release some heat over the cool night, and it just helps to keep things a little more protected that way when you have that. It's going to be very difficult to find them in this little forest of plants here, but there's some parsnips back here. And even if they weren't under so much cover from all these vines, just like the carrots and the potatoes, they're a root crop, they'll be just fine going through this. Parsnips are very hardy, very tough, and they like the cold. In fact, parsnips that have been frozen a little bit before you harvest them tend to be a lot sweeter. It goes for carrots as well. Leave them in the leave them to be. This doesn't look like much here in this garden bed right now. There's some pumpkins, we'll talk about those later, but most of this bed, what all this kind of dead leafy looking stuff is potatoes. Same thing, they can just stay there. They're just fine. So in front of me here is my cauliflower and my broccoli. Behind me is my cabbage. I also have a little bit more broccoli and some Brussels sprouts. Those are all brassica plants, brassica family, and they will be just fine to take a little bit of frost. And as you can see, these plants have more to worry about than frost. And a lot of them have reached their prime, they've given me their harvest, and they're just waiting for me to pull them out anyways. But I've even taken the net off. The flea beetles have come in, they always do once the crops are harvested in my area. They always get really intense out here in September, and so they have done their damage. And I've just taken the nets off in hopes that any birds that want to come along and nibble up some of these nasty little flea beetles can have at it. And the flea beetles won't really damage the forming heads in that. I found the plants are big enough now. If these were young seedlings, I would have to protect them from the flea beetles because the flea beetles will eat them to the ground. At this point, they're doing a lot of damage to some of the leaves, but the bulk of the plant is still fine. But as for frost goes, these can take a light frost. So most of these are just waiting to be taken out anyways. Same thing, I'll be making sure that the soil in this bed and the others behind me is nice and moist, and that will also help to just keep the temperatures up. These plants don't overly need that, but it doesn't hurt to give them that little extra moisture. Depending on how my day goes, because I'm going to be focused on the most susceptible plants first, but I may wind up harvesting some of this out of here as the day goes on, if I have time anyways, just because there's things in here that are ready for harvest. But I do have a few heads of cauliflower that I'm hoping will still form up, so they'll just stay here and wait out this cold night, and they'll be fine. My Brussels sprouts just blew anyway, so they're not even worth saving, so they're going to get yanked out of here. But again, that'll be for when I'm not worried about saving other things from frost. And it looks like I have a kohlrabi down here that I forgot about, so again, it's fine waiting out the frost. So it'll be just fine here, but it does look like it's ready to harvest, so I'll probably be taking it soon too. So the last crop that I'm going to be leaving and not concerning myself at all with through this possible very light frost is my celery. This beautiful celery. Some of it has gotten a little bit old. I have some big thick stalks in the middle here because I just harvest my celery throughout most of the growing season by just going down the side and just pulling off a piece when I want it and leaving the main plant intact. So you can see it's starting to think about going to seed and getting old anyways. But there's still lots of celery here to harvest, and I will be doing that, but not today, because this celery can handle a very light freeze and it'll be just fine. And especially in this area here where it has this fence on the other side. I don't know how well you can see the fence, but I have a fence on the east side of my celery. So when the sun comes up, anything that has the lightest touch of frost on it if the weather has warmed up enough before the sun hits the plant, that the frost is melted off, it'll be fine for the most part, except for very tender plants. So the celery definitely will be fine given its location. But good celery here. If I didn't know slugs have been crawling all over this, I'd be eating it right now. Homegrown celery is delicious. I was just looking around and noticing I have corn there too. Honestly, my corn hasn't done that well. I might only have like 2 ears on there that are worth eating. But even if it was a bumper crop of corn, I probably wouldn't worry about it. With this light frost like this, with the ears covered up the way they are, they're not going to get really damaged by the cold. And the plants, I find at this point, usually are okay to withstand a very light frost. When they're young, not so much. At this point, they can usually do well. My corn's kind of a loss this year, but if you have a good stand of corn and you're looking at a very light frost, I wouldn't worry about it personally. If you really, really love your corn and you're really worried about it, go ahead and pick the cobs that are ready, but you know, I'm sure it'd be fine. So with all those things that I'm really not worried about, you might be wondering, what is a concern when you're getting a light frost like that in the garden at the end of the season? And I guess that's really up to you as far as, you know, what you've harvested enough of and you feel like that plant has given you its life. What is still a healthy plant to keep going? And what could be harvested and ripened indoors might make a difference, and what needs that final time outside to really ripen properly. So many factors that are going to be personal to you and your garden. But plants that are going to be sensitive to a lighter frost are going to be things like your cucumbers, your melons, your squash plants, your tomatoes, eggplant, peppers, anything else that I have growing here. Beans. Beans don't like frost. I think for the most part, that's all that I have growing in my garden. All I can think of offhand that I have good experience with to tell you that you're going to want to protect. Now, there's different ways that you could do this. With my tomatoes and peppers, I'm going to go through and pick up anything that has started to ripen. Even if it still is mostly green or, you know, not really ripe yet, I'll be picking them off. I'll be taking them in somewhere warm, my house, and setting them to ripen. You have to be a little bit careful with peppers. If you leave them out like on a counter or something too long, they can really dry out. Tomatoes, I find I take them down, put them in my cool basement in like a single layer, double at the most if I really need to, and I'll just lay them out, nice bright spot, and they will slowly ripen over time. So they're really easy to handle. If the winds aren't too bad, I will try and come and put a sheet around some of my more favorite plants that are maybe still loaded with some very immature fruit, because like I said, we will have some nice weather probably after tonight, and I might be able to get 2 or 3 more weeks of decent growing weather. You never really know here. Weather can change quickly, but at this point that's what it's looking like, and that can be pretty typical around here. Another thing is the cucumbers. I'll come through, I'll pick off anything that's ready to be picked. When I have jarred a lot of pickles, I've picked a lot. I have a ton of cucumbers in my fridge right now, and I'm slowly working on actually dehydrating some cucumbers to try that for this year. So I'm not going to worry too much about saving these cucumber plants. I'm just going to let them go now. My squash and my pumpkins, I will go through. Some of my winter squash is ready and it can be picked. So if you can push your thumbnail against it and it doesn't really leave a mark, your squash is ready. If it's not ready, then it probably won't ripen up enough to store long term over winter if you cut it off now. But if it has started to ripen and it's close to that, you know, it's taking a little bit more effort to leave a mark, you can take it, put it in a nice warm sunny spot. And I find, especially with pumpkins, especially if you're just using them for jack-o'-lanterns, you can set them just a nice warm sunny spot for a week or so and they will turn color. They will kind of ripen up. Technically it's not the same as if you let them ripen on the vine. They won't have quite the same flavor, but if you're if you're really desperate to get them cut and taken in, you can do that, but you'll need to use them soon, within like a month or so. So I'll go through my my squash and my pumpkins, and I'll pick those they're ready to be picked, and I'll show you that when I do it. And the rest I'll leave. I might just cross my fingers. We'll see what kind of covers, and like I said, how windy it's going to be. If I can get them covered up, I might cover some of the plants. But they're such a big sprawling plant, it's pretty hard to do that with. So that'll be, we'll just see kind of what the day brings as to how far I go to try and cover some of these up. So you may have recently seen the video where I was harvesting my beans, my dried beans. And I picked off the pole beans as much as I'm going to. I just haven't gotten these plants untangled from the poles and pulled up here. But I do have a few black turtle bean plants that were planted later that I'm waiting for the beans to ripen on. So I'm going to come, I'll probably just throw, since it's just a small little patch here, I'll probably just throw a small burlap sack or a small sheet or pillowcase or something over them, just to protect these a little bit. And again, I'll make sure they're well watered before the temperatures start to drop. Won't worry about the poles, but if you had pole beans that you're still waiting on and you're just looking at one night that's cold weather, you could easily just throw a sheet over the pole, depending on how many you have, and they'll probably be fine in the morning. Beans can be pretty susceptible to frost. It's really going to depend on the conditions that you have and how cold it's getting, how windy it is, things like that. But that's what I would do if I was really hoping to try and save my pole beans. Like I said, these I'm not worried about. I've pretty much picked them clean, but the black turtle beans, I'd like to try and get this last little bit of harvest. So if there's any that are ready, that are kind of close to completely dry, they might still be just a little bit kind of soft for the shell. I can pick those. You can shell those beans, lay them out in a thin layer, and they'll dry somewhere with good air circulation. But there's a lot here that are still pretty green, so I'll probably just come with a blanket or a burlap sack or something and let them continue on after tonight. So the only thing left to discuss is the melons. What am I going to do with these melons that are so close to ripening? But I still have a few left here that I can't pick yet. The cantaloupe will ripen. I can pick it, I can put it on the counter, it'll ripen if it's close. So I'll probably pick some of those. Watermelon won't. So I'm not sure. Not sure what I'm going to do with watermelon. I will definitely be going through today and looking at all the watermelon, and any that I think are ripe, I will harvest. And then I'll assess and decide what the chances are of any of the smaller ones that aren't ripe yet actually getting to being ripe before my season is done, because this is a huge trellis, big plants. It's going to be very difficult to cover this in a way that's going to keep them protected from the cold weather, and they're very, very susceptible to the cold weather. So yeah, the plants are suffering from powdery mildew anyways. We'll see once I get through here harvesting these how they're going to be. That'll be the first job today, is just watering these pots that I haven't gotten to, and watering everything that needs to be watered. And then I'm going to be going through, and I'll start with my peppers and my tomatoes. Then I'll probably work on my squash and maybe pull those couple of ears of corn, just because maybe we'll eat them tonight when they're done. But again, I'm not really worried about them. And then I'll come back and assess the melons. I'll give them one more day basically to do what they're going to do, and I'll figure it out from there. So I'm going to be working on this all day. I'll bring you along for little bits if I feel like it's something that would be worthwhile for you to see. And I'll try and get a shot of everything that I've harvested at the end of it all. We'll go from there. Now, some of you who are regular viewers will know that I grow a lot of flowers in my garden. I grow a lot of plants, and I will probably just leave most of them. So if you're wondering about that, I'll probably leave most of them. This late in the season, a lot of them are starting to get tired, they're starting to get old, The things that I will try and cover up if I can, or group together at least somewhere close to the house, are the things that are in pots that are like my dahlias, my cannas, my acidanthera, those summer flowering bulbs that for this year really seem to kind of hit their peak late, and I'm just really starting to enjoy them. Those things I will put closer together, and I will just throw a sheet over them, or like I said, put them up close to the house. Most of the rest of my flowers, I think, unless I really have a change of heart later on, I will just leave. It's not a sure chance of frost tonight, so I don't want to get too crazy cleaning things out. And like I said, a lot of it is looking kind of rough anyways. So I'm going to have my hands full with the garden, and I think that's where I'm going to focus my time and energy. I remembered one more plant that I'm not worried about as I stand here looking, and let's see if I even have any left in the garden that are looking to be harvested, and then let's have a talk about that. So I don't even know if you'll be able to see these, but I did a big onion harvest already. Well, I wouldn't say big. I didn't have the best onion crop this year, but I have been noticing lately when I've been doing things that I missed a few. So these again would be fine to stay out here. Now this one just pulled right out, but these would be fine to stay here in the ground. So if you have alliums, you have like onions or garlic or anything that's still in the ground right now, it's not something you need to rush around and cover or pull and get put away. They would be fine. Now this, because it just pulled out of the ground, I'll take in the house. And I've already harvested my garlic for the year, so I'm not worried about that. And the same thing, don't panic because we're having a late frost and you don't have your garlic planted for next year. That's still to come in my garden, and I'm not worried about that at all. So it's time for me to work on the tomatoes and peppers, start getting things figured out. Can you see all these little colored tags all over? The birds have just been going crazy in my garden, which is a good thing. They're looking for bugs. And as you can see by the brassicas, I have a lot of flea beetles. So it's good, but they're pulling out all my tags. Luckily the plants are big enough now. I know the difference between the Antoy-Romanian and the banana peppers because the tags are laying on the ground away from the peppers here. Of course, when they're out pulling tags, they do enjoy a tasty snack of something more than just insects once in a while. Oh well, small price to pay for some pest management, I guess. I wonder if there's going to be rain on my work bee today. They weren't calling for any. These big clouds sure look like they could rain on us. And I'll tell you, when they block the sun, it makes it a little chilly. Okay, so I got a pretty good load of tomatoes. I have grabbed a couple jalapenos, a couple peppers off of those cheap sweet annum pepper plants that I don't know what they are exactly. And a few other like early prolifics. I think I have a King of the North or two in here. Some candy cane peppers, a couple sweet lipstick, a couple sweet banana peppers, a few little mini bells. Little selection of peppers there, but really, I just went through my peppers a few days ago. So anything that was kind of getting close to ripe, or like, you know, a green pepper that I would want to eat as a green pepper, I picked just a few days ago. There's a ton of peppers, especially the Sugar Rush Peach. I think there's quite a few Hungarian Hot Wax. There are a lot of smaller like bell peppers and things, but nothing that I think I want to pick right now. And the tomatoes, there's just oodles of green tomatoes left on there. And I could pick them. They will eventually ripen, almost guaranteed. I'll have a few that wouldn't, but I've had a lot that will ripen that way over the years. But they just don't have that flavor that I want out of a tomato when I bring them in green to ripen. And I know there's tons of green tomato recipes that I could be doing and using and ways of saving them, but I think being that it's one cold night, and it's not even gonna be like, I mean, it's gonna be cold, but it's not gonna be crazy cold. I think I'm just gonna try and bring out a couple of like king size sheets, throw them over these plants, over the stakes. And I think as long as the forecast doesn't get any worse, as long as the weather's not worse than it's forecast, I think I'll get away with that this time. And then it does look like it's gonna be warm-ish, you know, for this time of year. So after that, so I'm gonna just hedge my bets on this one. I'm gonna gamble a little bit with the garden and the tomatoes and that. But honestly, I'm out of canning jars right now. So if I was gonna can these or do anything with them, I need to go buy more again. And peppers, you know, how many can you eat just fresh? I've got other things I need to do. I will freeze some. I'll slice them up, I'll freeze them. But I feel like at this point, I've kind of hit my limit for what I can handle inside with them. And I feel like if they wait a few more weeks, I could get a handle on them better. So I'm gonna try and do that. I've also been eating my weight in cherry tomatoes and currant tomatoes. I've already dried a lot of these. So I don't think I'm gonna pick any to keep. They'll go probably under the blankets tonight, though I won't worry as much about getting them under the blankets if the blanket doesn't fit for whatever reason because of where they're planted. There won't be other tomatoes there that I need to worry about. But today I'm just gonna enjoy them until I turn into a tomato. So I think, oh, I don't know if I mentioned, I do have eggplant and summer squash out here, but I had picked those all clean yesterday or the day before, so there's nothing else on there. And they're not flowering anymore. I think those plants are done. So I think what I'm gonna do now is I think I'm gonna go through and just see if there's any broccoli that's ready to be picked. I know there's no cauliflower, but I think there might be a few florets of broccoli I could pick. Just because I'm out here and I may as well pick them. And then I'm gonna go over and look at the winter squash and the pumpkins and that and see what can be harvested now. Because, yeah, I think that's the next thing to do. I don't think I'm gonna worry about the cucumbers. I think I said that earlier. There's a lot there already. So I think that'll take me through most of it actually in the garden. I thought this would take me longer than it is, but I think because I'm not picking all the tomatoes and peppers, it's saved me some time. I'm just gonna have to come out and cover them up later, and I'll use sheets. I could use frost cloth. I have good quality frost cloth, but when I'm covering up things like the tomatoes that are on stakes, the stakes, especially if the wind gets up, will just poke right through and destroy my frost cloth. So I'll just get some old sheets, put them over there. I need to cover those beans. I better not forget those. Yeah, I think that's all it is. So let me just look through my broccoli real quick, and then we'll go work on that winter squash. So a couple little tiny florets of borderline broccoli. Yeah, I was wrong. I came back here because I'm headed towards some squash, and there's a couple little summer zucchini there. So kind of weird. I think that's where the stems were laying over them. Kind of odd, stripy. But yeah, I don't see any more. So back in here behind the corn, there's some East Elite squash. I don't know if you can see that one back there. And there are more on the vine back here somewhere. The vines have pretty much just died back, so I'm gonna just go get them out because it's hard to get the camera back there, and we'll have a look at them together. I know there's more in here somewhere. All right, while I was back there crawling around looking for the East Elite, I thought I might as well get what else was back there. So yeah, I thought I'd see more East Elite, but I know some of it was actually growing up into my neighbor's yard, and I told them to go ahead and harvest them and told them how they could do that and that. So I'm guessing maybe what I had seen before was in the other yard there, and they maybe grabbed them, which is great. I'm glad that I can share it that way. They're very, very nice about my crazy garden space here, and my plants occasionally sneaking through the fence. So if they get a little harvest out of it, I'm happy about that. So I did get 2 East Elite. These are a butter cup, I believe, type squash. They're very nice squash, and winter squash is ready when you kind of push it with your fingernail and you can't really make a dent or a mark. It doesn't go through the skin. The skin is hard. There was one little baby jack. This is just a decorative little pumpkin. So 2 of these Elite. And then this is a celebration. I have 3 of these. And I can't remember. I think these are kind of acorn squash. The shape of them, I would think that's right. So they can get some real different colors on them. So you can't just judge by whether it's orange or not. I've had some years that have a lot of green on them, and some that are really orange, some that are very yellow. So again, you just want to look if you can make that dent with the fingernail. And I can make the tiniest little mark on this one, but it's hard. Like, I would really have to push and work to get my fingernail through there. So this is good. I do have more winter squash to harvest, but I'll just tell you real quick here. Once you harvest it, winter squash should go somewhere. It's ideal if you can leave it out, if it's going to be above freezing, to leave it out in the sun, like right where you harvested. Basically, just cut off the vine, leave a few inches of stem left on there, and just leave it out in the sun for 5 days to a week or whatever. I don't usually get that luxury of having time to do that when I'm harvesting my squash. So I usually just take it and put it in a nice, bright, sunny place in my house. It's ideal to be not overly hot, but usually I can find a spot that's bright and sunny. Usually in my basement, actually, is where I find that the sun's shining nice and bright, but it's not getting really hot right in the sunshine. So that's what I'll do. The actual storage, you want it to be around like 10 degrees. Again, I don't have that. When you're storing them after you've kind of cured them for that week or so, you would want to put them in a dark spot after that. Like I said, a really cool temperature, and you want a fairly high humidity. I can't give them that humidity necessarily, or even that amount of cool, but I do my best with what I have, and they usually store a few months for me at least. If you have ideal conditions, I think some squash will go like 6 months or more. So over here is my autumn frost squash, and I've really been debating about this squash here. If you see me, it's the first year I've grown it. It's a type, what is it now? Autumn frost. I think it's a type of butternut. It's supposed to be a smaller squash, and it's supposed to be really good and store really well. But I wasn't sure what color it was supposed to be. I knew it was supposed to get this kind of bloom on it, but I have some that are turning kind of orange. I have some that are almost this gray green color. I didn't know, so I've been looking them up, and that's good. Like, look at your resources, right? Try and find it out. But it looks like it can be a variety of colors. It has this real bloom. Again, the skin is really hard. Like, I cannot push. Oh, there's rain falling on me. Well, I'm gonna get these done. But so I think, anyways, I haven't tested them all, but I'll do them as I go through. But I think they're all ready. I think I have 4 on here. There's one that's kind of made its way over and it stuck itself into another trellis. But so I'm just gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna harvest them with a fair amount of stem on it, and they'll just be cured and stored the same way as the rest. I believe this is the variety that they say isn't as fussy about needing to be cured as some other kinds. I don't know if this rain's gonna actually turn into anything or just a sprinkle, but we'll find out, I guess. So there's one. Yeah, that one's good. I'm gonna try and get a clean cut so you're not giving anywhere for disease to come into these stems here. So there's another one right here. Let's see how it's more of an orange color. But again, oh, that one I pierced right through. I don't know how well you can see it's actually dripping. So you can take it before it's done And because the weather we're having, I will just take this, and I won't expect to store it. I'll just cut it and we'll eat this within the next couple of weeks. It'll be fine. So that's what I'll do with that one. So big squash. So here's the one. It was stuck back in here in behind this trellis, and I pulled it out, tucked itself back there, and it's a completely different color than the other autumn frost, but it still has that bloom on it. This one has turned kind of an orange color on a side. You can see where it's dented in, where it was stuck in behind that trellis. Some of it's green. Definitely hard on the outside. So we'll take that one as well. So in this potato bed, I have sweetmeat squash on a trellis in behind. Up there, I'm not sure, there's two up there, and I'm not sure if they're ripe and ready, but there's a very large, I don't know how well you can see it down in there, but it's down there. So I think I have you in where you should be able to see back here, but I don't know if you can distinguish the squash from all the viney stuff. Just try and clear a little space. And now this is another one I let grow behind the trellis, and I think I'm gonna have to cut this trellis to get it out. Oh, it's heavy. Here it is. So I can make a slight puncture in this. This is a really big squash. I don't want to lose it. I'll probably leave the other two because they're definitely not ripe. But I think I'm going to try and take this one again. It won't be perfect for storage because it's not quite fully ripe. But I don't want it to get hit with the frost, and I can still make a little bit of a dent, but not a huge dent. Very close, so I think I should get some good flavor out of it still, because I can't actually break through like I could on that one autumn frost, but it's making more of a mark than on some of my other winter squash. But this is supposed to be a great sweet squash that is a really good storing squash, and it's just kind of cool looking, which is part of why I wanted to grow it. So I'm going to take this one, and I have a couple more winter squash that I grew more for decoration, but they didn't turn out to be very decorative. I'll have a look at those, see where they're at, and hopefully these clouds don't move in too much and we can do some pumpkins and melons still. Here's a better look at that sweet meat, and see if I can find where I was trying to poke it with my fingernail, just so you can kind of see. So yeah, like there's a little tiny mark there and a little tiny mark right over here somewhere. Oh, right there, I think it was. So they didn't pierce right through. I think it'll be all right. Might have been better to leave it a little longer, but with the weather we're having, I'd rather get at least one that I can try to know if I want to grow it again. But it's supposed to be a great squash. Okay, let's go see the decorative squashes I was growing. Down through my flower bed, I had just thrown a couple squash plants. Now these were supposed to be, I can't remember what the exact name of the seed pack was, but it was just a mix of squash from Vessi Seeds that was supposed to be some of their most interesting, warty, bumpy, gnarled up kind of looking squash, more for decoration. But as I understand, they're all edible as well. And I have 3 over here. There's one there, and it's hard to tell, but there's one right there. And then I have actually another plant that grew one that's off kind of that way. And this one I can't pierce, so it's ready to go. Has a nice ground spot on it. You want to be gentle, you don't want to drop them like I just did. This one doesn't seem like I can puncture it, so that's another one. And this one, not really, so that's those 3. So they all look very similar, but a little bit different coloring. This one's actually more yellow where it was in the sun. Okay, let's go down here. Ooh. And there's another vine that actually started way back there, somewhat near where the other ones were, but it snaked its way through and decided it wanted to put a squash out over there. I don't know if you can see that little bit of kind of orangey yellow there. And I don't know, I kind of looked at this a few days ago. And I'm not sure that it's, yeah, this one's really not ripe. But this plant is so big. I won't be able to cover it. It should be mostly in the shade till it warms up. And since I don't really know what this is, so I'm not really looking forward to anything. It was supposed to be just decorative and it's not. I'm gonna leave it and just see what happens with this one, because it's definitely not ready to go. I really don't know how much of it you can see, but it really, I could easily puncture it. It's too bad because it's the only one that kind of is different shape than those other three. All right, I don't even know if I have room for these here. Set them on here. Well, we're getting a good harvest. Okay, let's look at the pumpkins. I don't think I have very many that can be harvested, though I can see from where I'm standing that there was another Celebration squash stuck in the vines there that I missed, so I'm gonna go grab that. Come with me. These are really yummy. Just nice size little squash. This is a pretty small one. When I was cutting that, I could see this big cucumber, so I may as well take it while I'm in here. It's a nice cucumber. So let's look at pumpkins. Whoop. This is a Renegade pumpkin. And it's leaving a small dent, but not going piercing right through. So this one's ready to go. And then it has several, I don't know, cousins, brothers, sisters that aren't quite, I could have really used some bigger snips. Anyways, these are Renegade, and I have a few more here, but I'm positive just from looking at them that they're not ready. This is the only one that's all the way orange, and I have two that are almost orange and one that's still quite green. I didn't even know it was in here till a few days ago. So there's a little green one back just behind that flower there. It's hard to tell, but there's a little pumpkin back there. I doubt that'll mature this year, but we'll leave it. And then there's two orange ones. There's one there, and there's one hiding just peeking out there. When the wind blows a leaf, you can see it. So let's have a look at these. So I don't think these are going to be ready just because of their color, but looks can be deceiving. And actually, they're pretty hard, so these snips might not cut this. So there's one. Oh, you see how orange it is there on one spot there. So this will continue to turn color in the curing process. Let's see this one. Yeah, again, I can push, but I can't get through it. So that one's ready too. So good thing I checked. A little dirty on the bottom, but not bad. Two nice pumpkins. I have a pumpkin plant here that has just decided to put out some little pumpkins. I don't think they'll grow into anything. I'm not even sure what pumpkin it is. I'm guessing it's this one here, which is New Rocket. And then I have a little tiny Casper down here. And I can still pierce that, so I'm gonna leave it. And it's actually protected depending on where the leaves for that plant exactly are, and it might last through the frost. My Rouge Vif de Temps that I was so looking forward to never did anything. I don't even know if I've had female flowers on it. Very disappointing, but it was kind of in the back in the shadows. All right. Oh no. Oh, that's rotten. The tip-top melon. I should have known. I read it doesn't just slip from the vine. You have to watch it. I looked at it a few days ago. Oh, do you see that? How squishy that is? Oh no. How disappointing. I haven't tried this yet. I'm so looking forward to it. It smells so good, but it is rotten. Maybe I can get a little bit out of here. I don't know. This one is really soft. I was thinking it's just from watering. Now I'm wondering, but it's not like this. Oh, we'll take it. That is so sad. Yeah, so I don't know if that'll be worth anything to eat or not. Oh. Well, I'm still learning, hey? This tiny little bit feels like it's softening up too. Now again, these vines are just they're rotting away. But try and we'll take this little one. It actually does have some good scent to it, so maybe there's a ripe fruit in there. I don't know. That's the tip-top melon. I've got one that's definitely rotten, one that might be, and one that who knows if it's actually ripe yet. I don't know. I'm still learning this. I do have some Minnesota Midget over on the other side that I think are ready. I'm gonna just go get rid of these, and then I might take this and cut. The one side is still firm, just to see what's inside. I don't know, it could be disgusting, but I'm just gonna set these aside and then I'll come back and look at those Minnesota Midget. All right, I'm for sure eating my weight in these tomatoes today, but here's this other Minnesota Midget. I think this is one too. Yeah, it is. Can't remember what's down in here. That looks like a sweet Siberian watermelon. That's, I think, a sweet Siberian watermelon. So this hasn't even started to change color, but it's very well netted. Rock hard though. So do I take it and hope it ripens on my counter? Or do I leave it and hope it doesn't get wrecked by frost? This one is actually softer. Still no smell. I think the vine's just more rotten on that one. I don't know what to do. What would you do? This watermelon in behind, the tendril at the back is completely dried up. Again, I don't know, because some of these plants are just dying off from powdery mildew, but that tendril was definitely done. So we'll take this and see. Sweet Siberian. I don't know what to do about these. This one looks like, I mean, the plant's dead that it's on, I think, anyway, so I may as well take it. And I kind of feel like this one's the same way, so we'll just take them, leave them on the counter, see if they get ripe. The watermelon won't ripen anymore, as far as I understand. It's not like I'm an expert watermelon grower, but I'm just saying watermelon won't ripen on the counter anymore. The muskmelon or cantaloupe will. So I'm going to set these aside. I think I already said this one, the tendril's still very green on it, so I may as well leave it. I'll have a look. There's a couple more up higher. I'll have a look at those. I'm going to get these out of my hand so before I drop them. So I have this guy right here. This is a sweet Siberian, I think. There's a moon and stars leaf by it, but I think if you follow this one back, it's a sweet Siberian leaf on this vine. I kind of think it's too young, and I kind of think it's not ripe, but I don't know. Just gonna leave it, I guess, for now. We'll find out later. This one here, which is, I believe, another sweet Siberian. The leaves look just terrible on it. It's sick. These plants are sick, sick, sick. I'm going to pull it out of its stalk if I can, and just we'll have a look at it. It's the tendrils on this, right, it's a leaf, but right here the tendril is crunchy and dry. Now, is it because the plant is sick? Again, I don't know. These were supposed to get a lot bigger, but I'm going to take this and we'll have a look at it and see how it is. So this early Canada improved is, the tendril is still very green on it. The plant itself doesn't seem to be as sick as some of my other vines. It's definitely showing age, but doesn't look as bad. It's on the other side of the trellis from where the worst of them seem to be. Like I said, the tendril's still green. It's not ready. I know it's not ready. Should grow a little bigger. So I'm just gonna leave it. It's being under this tree, because there's a big maple tree that goes over top of this trellis. There's just sun that kind of shines in through the edges in the morning and afternoon. So I'm thinking being under this tree, it might actually protect this a little bit if we get a light frost. I'm not sure. But so I'm gonna leave these couple of pumpkins, this couple of watermelon that are still, I'm not too sure about, and we'll see what happens with them. But they're not gonna ripen if I pick them, so I may as well leave them, and I'm not gonna be able to cover this up properly, I don't think, so I'll just leave them and we'll see what happens. But I did take this one sweet Siberian. Doesn't sound too bad. The tendril was dried up. It's not real big, but it's okay. So we'll see how it is. Wow. So there was a lot to be harvested out here today. I got through it a lot faster than I thought I would. It's just after 2, and I did stop for lunch, so only about 3 hours to get through this. Now I didn't get all the tomatoes and peppers off. I already said that. But that's quite a bit that I did get. I'll throw something over those tomatoes and peppers. I'll probably put the small pots of mini bell peppers just in my shed. That'll be enough for tonight, even though it's not an insulated shed. It'll hold enough heat to get me a couple of degrees in there, so it should be fine. But yeah, that's a pretty good, I'm pretty happy with that. I probably said that like 6 times. But I got, what did I get? 3 renegade pumpkins. Got this big sweet meat squash, a couple of watermelon, a few questionable cantaloupe. What did I have there? 4 autumn frost. Squash, winter squash. I think I wound up with 4 celebration squash, 2 Easter leaf. I got these 3 large, I don't know what kind. They were supposed to be warty and weird and decorative, and although there is some lumps and bumps on them, it's not super obvious unless you're feeling them. But I'll try them and hopefully they're good to taste. Several peppers that are hiding underneath here, and a bunch of tomatoes in various stages of ripeness. So, oh, and that one little mini baby jack pumpkin. Oh, and I think there was a cucumber. Yeah, a cucumber and a tiny bit of broccoli. Wow. I think I've decided to just leave those couple of apples on that tree. It's a Goodland apple tree. I'm still kind of learning when to harvest, but I harvested 4 dozen because the apples were just falling off the tree there a couple weeks ago, a week ago. So I just harvested them. They're supposed to be a red apple, but most of them were kind of a green, blushing to pink. So I'm not sure they were ready. They taste good, but they have a bit of a sour flavor. And I'm sure I harvested some another year that were a little sweeter and a little more red. It's been a good harvest. I do have some just decorative gourds on a trellis kind of behind me right now. I think I'll pop those off. May as well pop them off and take them in. I haven't checked, but I kind of assume they need to cure in a similar way as the squash, the winter squash and the pumpkins. Oh, I think there's some, didn't I pick 2 zucchini that are in here somewhere too? That was a good day. Anyway, so I'm gonna grab those couple decorative gourds. I'll just throw them on top. And then I'll have to start hauling this stuff in the house and getting it in its respective places to be either stored, prepared, ripened, cured, whatever it needs, depending on what it is. So I hope you enjoyed this kind of rattle through my garden as I get ready for what's supposed to be a pretty cold night. And we'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching. Bye.